Hey everybody, this is Harry, as you already know because you're on my channel. Happy Election Day here in the United States. Uh, Hopefully everything goes smoothly today and everybody accepts the results that come out today. Hopefully today we'll find out. We don't know. It's a good possibility we won't. But anyways, hopefully everything will turn out great um, for whoever you vote for this year. So, anyways, James and Ian come up with a list, another list of films of the century, the last 100 years, your favorite films of each decade, and so they said anybody could participate, and I usually try to join in their little schemes. Hopefully, we can get up to 2020 and uh, and get it all done by the end of the year. Hopefully, we'll see. So yeah. What the deal is you have to pick a favorite film from each decade up to 2020. So they start with the 1920s. I guess the 1910s, which is difficult. A lot of people have not seen films from the 1910s, not that many, unless it's Birth of a Nation or Intolerance or stuff like that, or short films, which I've seen plenty. I've seen a couple of handful of films from the 19 teens, maybe more. So they're going to start off with 1920 to 1929, and then I have two choices for films. I'll try not to go into detail on them and try to read my own scribble, as you can see here. So I was working on this yesterday. My daughter says, "Oh, you're doing family history?" I said, "No, I'm doing a project for my buddies in the film group." So anyways, we're going to start off with 1920, and I watched James, Ian's, and I watched Rick's video, so I'm not going to try to repeat the most common films that were mentioned, like Nosferatu or The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari or Metropolis. I've picked other films that I do enjoy and like from the decade. So it might it's not meaning it's the best film. These are the ones I enjoy. So 1920 will start off with, I can't believe it's already 3 minutes. Dr. Jekyll and Mr Hyde from 1920, starring John Barrymore, Brandon Hurst, Martha Mansfield, directed by John S. Robertson. I watched The Wolfman the other day, and they were talking about the transformation from Lon Chaney going from the wolf, from his character Larry Talbot to the Wolfman, but the transformation from John Barrymore from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde was done in one shot, and it's amazing. It's a classic film. First saw it years ago in the 80s on American Movie Channel, American Movie Classics, I think it was called at the time, but they played a lot of old films, and that's where the first time I seen it, fell in love and went and bought the DVD. So there you go. Oops, and I just got attacked. Next one for 1920, I suggest is The Penalty. It's a Lon Chaney film. Speaking of Lon Chaney, Charles Clary and Doris Pawn, if I can read my handwriting, directed by Wallace Worsley, who also directed The Hunchback of Notre Dame. His character in the movie, Lon Chaney, is named Blizzard. He becomes deranged from an childhood operation, in which both legs were needlessly amputated, and becomes a criminal, a mob boss in the film. Later on, very nasty, mean to women. And the thing about this one is that Lon Chaney is not have doesn't have legs, at least below his calves. His legs were pulled back and tied behind him, and so he's walking on his knees in the film, like he has no, but they were all tied into the back of his legs. So if you get this film, look it out. If you're interested in this, anything with Lon Chaney in it is pretty decent. I would suggest this one, The Penalty for 1920. 1921, I gone with Rudolph Valentino's The Sheik, which I just watched earlier this year. Again, I've watched it before, but this time I bought it on Blu-ray from Kino. Stars Rudolph Valentino, Agnes Ayres, Ruth Miller. Directed by George Melford. It's about an Arabian sheik becomes infatuated with an adventurous English woman, and then abducts her in the desert, and then she winds up falling in love with him. And then they made a sequel a couple of years later called The Son of the Sheik, which he reprised. Well, he plays in this. Rudolph Valentino plays in this movie, The Son of Sheik, as the son. So it plays his own son in the movie. So and so yeah, 1921, Rudolph Valentino, The Sheik. Also, The Phantom Carriage, directed by Victor Sjöström. Swedish film, can be found on the Criterion label. In the Criterion collection, like I said, it's a Swedish film about death. Comes in when the new year rolls around, and somebody dies, and then they do the carriage and take dead body. So, not the best way to describe it, but I'm trying not to make this a long video, and it's already 7 minutes. So, The Phantom Carriage. 1922, Robin Hood, with Douglas Fairbanks, Wallace Beery, Alan Hale, directed by Alan Dwan. Everybody knows the Robin Hood story. This is an adventure film. Shot. Douglas Fairbanks looks like he's having a lot of fun. Does most of his own stunts in this film. So you need to check it out if you can find it. You can probably find it on YouTube. I have a boot copy of it, so from a DVD that was released on Kino back in the early 2000s. Next one is Blood and Sand, another Rudolph Valentino movie from 1922, starring Rudolph Valentino, Nina Naldi, Walter Long. I watched this just this year because I bought it on Blu-ray, and it's directed by Fred Niblo and Dorothy Arzner. Valentino becomes a toreador. That's his goal, to be a toreador, a famous, like a matador. And he does against his mother's wishes because, it's a dangerous sport and he can get killed. He marries his childhood sweetheart. Then because he becomes famous, he starts cheating and becomes infatuated with another woman. And then and he hooks up with a bandit as well. Good film. If you're into that type of film, it's a good film, and a good one to start with Rudolph Valentino, famous silent screen actor. All right, 1923. I went with Our Hospitality with Buster Keaton. Stars Joe Roberts as well, Natalie Talmadge, his wife. Also has young Buster Keaton's son, young Joseph Keaton, and his father, Joseph Keaton's in it as well. Kind of a family affair. Directed by Buster Keaton and John G. Blystone. My favorite Buster Keaton film. Probably because it's the first full-length Buster Keaton film I ever watched. I've seen this before, The General, which is a great film. But this one is my favorite. The costumes in it, the period pieces, the sets are so authentic to the 1840s. The train tracks that they had the train on there. It's funny as hell. See how it go. See how trains were run back then. So Our Hospitality. Also from 1923, a movie called Covered Wagon, uh, starring Lois Wilson, Alan Hale, Tully Marshall, directed by James Cruz. It was the highest grossing film in 1923. It's set in 1848 about two caravans of expatriates unite to travel to Oregon and their troubles and travails that happen on their way to Oregon. And it was a big epic film back then in 1923. 1924, a movie called Greed, which is hard to find. You can find it on YouTube. I have a reconstructed copy of it that I what do you call it? They copied off of Turner Classic Movies years ago, and I burned it onto a DVD. You were able to copy it on. I had a VCR or DVD at the time, where you can take movies and it's like a TiVo thing where you can record movies on there, and then you can burn them onto a DVD. So that's what I did with this, and that's the only reason why I have this copy. It's a reconstruction. Stars Gibson Gowland, Zazu Pitts, John Herschelt, Chester Conklin, directed by Eric von Stroheim. It's based on the novel McTeague by Frank Norris. He is a dentist apprentice, and he winds up practicing dentistry illegally without a license, basically. His wife, he marries a woman who won a lottery, $5,000, and she refuses to spend any of the money. She's saving it, and he wants to spend it, and it just turns bad from there. This film is infamous. It didn't do well at the box office, but it's infamous because the original cut of this movie, the first cut of this movie, was 9 hours long, and then it got cut down. The reconstructed version is 239 minutes, which is 4 hours. So 4 hours of silent film is what you get. But if you can find it, it's probably on YouTube. I have a burned copy of it, and that's, like I said, the only one I have of it. I saw that on commercial TV. They had played it on TBS, I think, and it had commercials in it, and I had videotaped it, but and then it came back on TCM, and then I copied it. So, anyways, Greed for 1924. Also for 1924, The Iron Horse, the earliest John Ford movie I have in my collection. It's a silent, of course. Stars George O'Brien, Madge Bellamy, Chief John Bigtree, and it's a film about the construction of the American first transcontinental railroad. Great film. I love the film. You need to seek it out. 1925, The Lost World, the original Jurassic Park, starring Wallace Beery, Bessie Love, Louis Stone, directed by Harry O'Hoyt. Willis O'Brien did the stop animation of the dinosaurs in this film, and who wound up doing the King Kong movie in 1933. The Lost World, you need to seek it out. Flicker Alley did not a reconstruction, but a remaster of the film, and it looks great. And actually a restructure too, because it added parts from different versions of the film, like the European version and all that, to fill in the gaps of the missing pieces. So that's The Lost World. Also from 1925, The Big Parade, starring John Gilbert, Renee Outery, Herbert Bosworth, directed by King Vidor. World War One film of that influence, subsequent films about World War One, especially All Quiet on the Western Front. And it was the highest grossing silent movie ever, was The Big Parade. It is on Paramount. I have a digibook of it on Blu-ray. So you need to seek that out if you're into World War One pictures. The Big Parade. 1926, we go to now The Black Pirate, starring Douglas Fairbanks, Billy Dove, Donald Crisp, directed by Alan Parker. Filmed in 2-color Technicolor, one of the first color films in color. Silent. It was a silent. It was released on Kino and it went out of print, and I wanted to find a copy of it, and I had to pay $50 for it. So, and I did. I was happy to do it because I always wanted it in the collection. That's why you don't procrastinate. Don't put things off. It's always going to be there. It's not. It goes out of print eventually, and it's hard to come by. And then until they re-release it again, if you're lucky. Also, 1926. This one's kind of a different type of film. It has more historical significance than anything. It's called The Flying Ace. It was filmed in Jacksonville, Florida, which is about an hour and 20 minutes away from me, in a place called Arlington, in a neighborhood in Arlington. It is an all-black cast film. It was directed by Richard E. Norman and starring Lawrence Kreiner, Catherine Boyd, and Boise DeLay. It's a film about a veteran World War I pilot returns home, a war hero, and gets a job back as a railroad detective. And he solves crimes. But like I said, the historical significance of it is it's the print still survives. It's from Norman Studios, and they basically filmed films that were made by African Americans at that time. So it was a studio that made those films, and then they had made other films in the Jacksonville area. Before that, when it was another company that made Oliver Hardy, that made silent movies in Jacksonville, they also did those as well. But before they did this, so The Flying Ace, that is available on YouTube. It is also available on Kino in the African American box set, films of African Americans. 1927, Wings, starring Clara Bow, Charlie Rogers, Richard Arlen, Gary Cooper has a brief bit in it. Directed by William L. Wellman, a World War I film about fighter pilots. Two pilots fall in love with the same girl. First film to win an Academy Award for Best Film. Also from 1927, The Kid Brother, starring Harold Lloyd, Jonah Ralston, directed by Ted Wild, J. Howe. That's on Criterion. So you need to check that out. Almost 20 minutes here. Let's see if I can get done. 1928, The Circus with Charlie Chaplain. It was mentioned on Ian's list. Myrna Kennedy, Ernest Garcia, directed by Charles Chaplin. The Cameraman for 1928, Buster Keaton, Marceline Day, Harold Goodwin, directed by Buster Keaton and Edward Sedgwick. The Cameraman was the last great silent film from Buster Keaton, and that just got released on Criterion as well. Great film, great sequences. It was the last time that Buster Keaton had complete control of his film. And then MGM, it was his first film with MGM, and everything went downhill afterward. 1929, a film called Hallelujah, starring Daniel L. Haynes, Nina Mae, McKinney William, Fontaine, directed by King Vidor. Excuse me. A musical about a black man turned preacher after he accidentally killed a man. Another film that has an all-black cast in it. And it's a sound film, of course, because it's a musical. Early talkie. I actually just ordered it on DVD again when I was doing this list. I was like, oh wow, I haven't seen it in a while, but uh, it's a great film, pioneering film. And it was one of the first all black cast films made by a major studio at the time. And also, 1929, last but not least, Diary of a Lost Girl, starring Louise Brooks and Andre Roland, directed by G.W. Pabst. Thiamine is an innocent young girl who is raped by a clerk in her father's pharmacy. She becomes pregnant, rejected by family, and it's a German-made film. And so those are my films for the decade of 1920. Sorry for rushing it, but I didn't want to make it long, and I screwed that up. So tell me what your thoughts about these films. Give us your own list. Tell me what films have you seen any of these films, or what your favorite films from the 1920s. Thank you for watching. You take care, and peace out, and go vote. Bye. Maybe. It's not wanting to stop.